The ultimatum: the Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. From their massive capital ships, they watched as yet another primitive world appeared on their expansion maps. Earth, a small blue planet and unremarkable. System, inhabited by a species that had barely learned to leave their own atmosphere. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominion, his 6 eyes scanning the tactical display. The human homeworld rotated slowly before them, unaware of the fate that awaited. Behind him, rows of Imperial officers worked at their stations, preparing the standard conquest protocols. "Status report," Vex commanded, his voice echoing through the vast bridge. "All fleets in position, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. 12 battle groups, over 400 vessels. "The humans have detected our presence, but show no signs of retreat." Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. In 3 millennia, no species had ever resisted the Empire's might. The pattern was always the same: shock, fear, then swift surrender. These humans would be no different. The communication array crackled to life. On the main screen appeared a human face, weathered, determined, with steel-gray eyes that held no trace of fear. The human wore what appeared to be a military uniform, simple but clean. "I am General Kane, representing Earth's United Defense Council," the human said. "State your business in our system." Vex stepped forward, his imposing figure casting shadows. Across the bridge, "I'm Admiral Vex of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender your world immediately and submit to Imperial rule. Your people will serve the Empire, your resources will be harvested, and your planet will become another jewel in our collection." General Kane's expression didn't change. "And if we refuse?" "Refusal is not an option," Vex replied coldly. "We have conquered over 10,000 worlds. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against our technology. Submit now, and your people will be treated as servants rather than slaves." The human was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a strange quality. Not fear, but something else. Something that made several Imperial officers exchange glances. "Admiral, you've made a mistake," Kane said simply. "You've threatened the wrong species." Vex's mandibles clicked in amusement. "You have 24 hours to consider our offer. When we return, you will kneel before the Empire's might, or we will reduce your world to ash." The transmission ended. Around the bridge, Imperial officers began preparing for what they assumed would be a simple mop-up operation. They had seen this countless times before, but down on Earth, something different was happening. In hidden bunkers beneath mountains, in underground facilities that had been built in secret for decades, humanity was preparing for war. Not the kind of war the Empire expected. Not a desperate last stand with primitive weapons. General Kane walked through the corridors of Deep Command, Earth's most classified military installation. Around him, technicians worked frantically at control panels, their faces lit by the glow of screens, showing readouts that would have been impossible just years before. "Status report," Kane called out. "All systems online, General," replied Dr. Webb, the chief scientist. "The quantum drives are fully charged. Nova torpedoes are armed and ready. The fleet is prepared for deployment." Kane nodded grimly. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had learned the hard way that they were not alone in the universe. The Empire's scouts had been detected decades ago, and Earth's greatest minds had been working in secret ever since. They had studied the Empire's tactics, analyzed their technology from intercepted communications, and prepared accordingly. While the Empire saw humans as primitives who had barely reached their own moon, the truth was far different out above them. The Imperial fleet waited in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. Admiral Vex reviewed the battle plans. Already planning the victory celebration? In his experience, most species surrendered before the deadline. Those few who didn't were quickly crushed. But as the hours ticked by, something unusual began to happen. Long-range sensors detected movement throughout the human system. Not the panicked evacuation they expected, but organized, purposeful activity. Sir, the tactical officer called out, uncertainty in his voice. We're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Vex dismissed the concern with a wave. Primitive power generators. Nothing that concerns us. As the 24-hour deadline approached, both sides prepared for what would come next. The Empire expected swift victory and another conquered world. But Earth was ready to show the galaxy that humanity would never kneel. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The first strike, the deadline passed in silence. Admiral Vex stood on his bridge, watching Earth's blue marble rotate peacefully below. No surrender message had come. No white flags appeared on their primitive communication arrays. Begin the demonstration, Vex ordered. Target their largest population center. One focused bombardment should convince them. The Imperial fleet's weapons charged with deadly precision. Particle beams that could crack continents prepared to fire. But as the order was given, something impossible happened. The space around Earth shimmered. What the Empire had assumed was empty void suddenly revealed itself to be something else entirely. Massive structures materialized, not ships built in the primitive style they expected, but sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them. What in the void? Vex began, but his words were cut short. Earth's hidden fleet opened fire first. Beams of pure energy, far more advanced than anything in the Empire's arsenal, lanced out across space. The first salvo struck 3 Imperial destroyers, and they simply vanished. Not destroyed, vaporized completely, as if they had never existed. Impossible. Vex roared. These primitives don't have that kind of technology. But the evidence was undeniable. Earth's ships moved with precision that defied physics. Their weapons struck with power that exceeded Imperial capabilities, and their shields absorbed the Empire's return fire without even flickering. General, Kane's voice echoed across all Imperial communication channels. Admiral Vex, you were warned. You threatened the wrong species. The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 minutes. Not because it was evenly matched, but because that's how long it took for Earth's forces to methodically dismantle the Imperial fleet. Ships that had conquered worlds were reduced to debris. Soldiers who had never known defeat found themselves floating in escape pods, watching their mighty vessels burn. Admiral Vex, his flagship crippled and drifting, stared in horror at the tactical display. Of his 400 ships, less than 50 remained operational, and those were only intact because the humans had allowed them to be. This is impossible, he whispered. The intelligence reports humans barely reached their own moon. Doctor. Webb appeared on the communication screen beside General Kane. You're partially right, Admiral. 50 years ago, we had barely reached our moon. But you made a critical error. You assumed we stopped advancing. The truth was more complex than the Empire could have imagined. Humanity had detected the Empire's scout ships decades ago. While the Empire dismissed them as primitives, Earth scientists had been working in secret, pushing the boundaries of physics elf. You see, Dr. Webb continued, when we realized we weren't alone, we didn't just prepare for war. We revolutionized our entire understanding of science. Quantum mechanics, dimensional engineering, energy manipulation, we advanced centuries and decades. Kane stepped forward. We let you believe we were primitive. We wanted you to underestimate. U.S., every species you conquered gave us more data about your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. The remaining Imperial ships tried to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by more human vessels. These weren't the crude metal constructs the Empire expected, but ships that seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. Admiral, Kane's voice was calm, almost gentle. You're going to take a message back to your Empire. Tell them that Earth is not interested in joining their collection of conquered worlds. Tell them that humanity has evolved beyond their understanding. Vex found his voice. The Empire will not tolerate this defeat. We have millions of ships, countless worlds under our control, and we have something you've never encountered. In replied, We have humans who refuse to kneel. The human fleet began to withdraw, their advanced ships disappearing back into whatever dimensional space they had emerged from. But before they vanished completely, Kane delivered his final message. You have 7 days to evacuate any Imperial presence from this sector. After that, we consider any Empire ship within 50 light years of Earth to be a hostile target. And Admiral, when you report back to your leaders, make sure they understand something important. The communication screen focused on Kane's face, his expression deadly serious. Asterisk. This wasn't a battle. This was a warning. Next time we won't be so merciful. The transmission ended. The Imperial survivors were left floating in space, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the Empire's most powerful fleet. In 17 minutes, everything they believed about galactic hierarchy had been shattered. Asterisk, the Empire's response. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Emperor Drax, ruler of 10,000 worlds, stood before the assembled Imperial High Command, his rage barely contained. The holographic display showed the aftermath of the Earth engagement. Debris fields where proud warships once flew. Explain to me, Drax's voice was deadly quiet, how a primitive world destroyed our finest fleet. Admiral Vex, stripped of his rank and bearing the scars of his escape pod's crash landing, stood before the assembly. His report had been dismissed as impossible, then as exaggeration, and finally as the ravings of a broken mind. But the evidence was undeniable. Your Majesty, Fleet Commander Torque stepped forward. Intelligence suggests the humans have been hiding their true capabilities. Our scouts reported primitive technology because that's what they were meant to see. Irrelevant. Drax snapped. They're one world. We control 10,000. Mobilize the armadas. All of them. The scale of the Empire's response was unprecedented. Never before had they committed their full military might against a single planet. But Earth had done something no species had ever done. They had humiliated the Empire in front of the entire galaxy. Within days, the greatest fleet in galactic history was assembled. 5,000 warships, including the Empire's ultimate weapon, the World Crusher Annihilator. A vessel the size of a small moon designed to crack planets like eggs. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity prepared for the storm they knew was coming. General. Kane stood in the Global Command Center, watching as reports flowed in from across the solar system. Sir, Lieutenant Fox reported, long-range sensors detect a massive Imperial buildup. Conservative estimates put their fleet size at over 5,000 vessels. Kane nodded grimly. They had expected this response. The Empire's pride had been wounded, and wounded predators were always the most dangerous. Status of our defensive preparations. Dr. Webb looked up from her console. The barrier is fully operational. All orbital platforms are online. The solar defense grid is at maximum power. And General ... She paused. The Genesis protocol is ready for deployment. Kane's expression darkened. The Genesis protocol was humanity's final option, a weapon so terrible that even Earth's leaders had debated whether it should ever be built. But faced with total annihilation, sometimes terrible weapons became necessary. Across the galaxy, other species watched with growing concern. The Empire had always been ruthless, but their response to Earth seemed excessive even by Imperial standards. Some worlds quietly began to wonder, if humans could defeat an Imperial fleet, what did that mean for the Empire's supposed invincibility? On the Rim worlds, whispers spread through underground networks. Species that had been conquered generations ago began to remember what freedom felt like. The Empire's absolute control had always depended on the belief that resistance was futile. But Earth had proven that wrong. Your Majesty, Intelligence Chief Vora approached the Emperor cautiously. We're detecting unusual communications patterns across the outer territories. Some worlds appear to be ... restless. Drax's eyes blazed with fury. Then we make an example of Earth that will be remembered for 1,000 years. No species will ever dare to defy us again. The Imperial Armada began its journey toward Earth, their ships darkening the space lanes as they passed. It was a sight that had brought countless worlds to their knees, the unstoppable might of galactic civilization bearing down on a single target. But as they traveled, the Empire began to encounter something unexpected. Human ships appeared at the edge of sensor range, not attacking, but observing. These vessels seemed to phase in and out of normal space, making them impossible to target or pursue. "They're watching us," Admiral Zane reported to the fleet commanders. "Studying our formations, our capabilities." "Let them watch," Drax replied from his command throne aboard the Annihilator. "When they see the full might of the Empire assembled against them, perhaps they'll finally understand the futility of resistance." But on Earth, General Kane studied the incoming fleet with different eyes. Each ship that appeared on their sensors was analyzed, its weaknesses cataloged, its destruction planned. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, and they had not been idle. "They're bringing everything," Kane observed, watching the tactical display. "Good, we won't have to hunt them down across the galaxy." Dr. Webb looked at him with concern. "General, there are over 5,000 ships out there. Are you certain we're ready for this?" Kane's smile was cold and determined. "Doctor, they still don't understand what they're facing. They see one world standing against an empire, but they're wrong." He gestured to the display showing Earth's hidden defensive network. "They're not facing one world. They're facing humanity. And humanity has never learned how to surrender." Total War: The Imperial Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a plague of metal locusts. 5,000 warships stretched across space in perfect formation, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Emperor Drax stood on the bridge of the Annihilator, watching Earth's small sun grow larger on the view screen. Behind him, the greatest concentration of military power in galactic history awaited his command. Open communications to the human homeworld. He ordered. General Kane's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from Earth's surface. He looked tired but unbroken, surrounded by the controlled chaos of humanity's war room. "I am Emperor Drax," the Imperial ruler began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have seen what a single fleet could not accomplish. Now face the full might of the Galactic Empire. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift." Kane looked at the tactical display, showing the massive enemy force. Any sane species would have begged for mercy. Instead, he smiled. "Emperor, you've made the same mistake your admiral did. You still think you're fighting primitives. I think I'm about to witness the complete annihilation of an annoying species." Drax replied coldly. "You have 1 hour to surrender." The transmission ended. Around the solar system, both sides prepared for what would either be humanity's last stand or the Empire's greatest defeat. But as the Imperial fleet moved into attack formation, something extraordinary began to happen. Space itself seemed to ripple around Earth, and suddenly the human defensive fleet was revealed in its full glory. What the Empire detected as a few dozen ships was actually thousands. Massive orbital fortresses materialized from dimensional hiding spots. Weapon platforms, the size of asteroids, powered up with energy signatures that made Imperial sensors scream warnings. "Impossible," Fleet Admiral Zane gasped. "Where did they all come from?" Dr. Webb's voice echoed across all Imperial channels. "Dimensional fold technology. Admiral. We've been building this defense network in parallel space for 50 years. You were looking at our solar system, but you weren't seeing all of it. The battle began with Earth's first salvo. Weapons that bent the laws of physics struck the Imperial vanguard with devastating precision. Ships that had conquered worlds were reduced to atomic particles in seconds. But the Empire's numbers were overwhelming. For every Imperial ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The space around Earth became a hellscape of energy beams, exploding vessels, and debris clouds that had once been mighty warships. Hours passed. Earth's defensive platforms began to fall under the relentless assault. Imperial forces pushed deeper into the solar system. Their losses terrible, but their advance unstoppable. General Kane watched the tactical display with growing concern. They had inflicted catastrophic damage on the Empire, but it wasn't enough. The sheer numbers were overwhelming their defenses. "Sir," Lieutenant Fox called out, "the outer defense grid is failing." "They're breaking through?" Kane nodded grimly. It was time for humanity's final card. "Dr. Webb, initiate the Genesis protocol." The scientist's hands hesitated over her controls. "General, once we activate this, there's no going back. The consequences will be felt across the entire galaxy." "Do it, deep beneath Earth's surface, in installations that had been built in absolute secrecy." Humanity's ultimate weapon came online. The Genesis protocol wasn't just a weapon. It was a fundamental restructuring of the laws of physics within a targeted area. Emperor. Drax felt it first as a strange tingling in the air aboard his flagship. Then his sensors began reporting impossible. "Readings. What's happening?" He demanded. The answer came as space itself began to change around the Imperial fleet. The vacuum that had always been empty suddenly became hostile to Imperial technology. Ships that had functioned perfectly for centuries began to fail, as the fundamental constants they relied upon shifted. Asterisk. It's not possible. Admiral Zane whispered, watching his instruments go mad. "They're changing the laws of physics." General Kane's voice cut through the chaos. "Emperor, you wanted to see what humanity was capable of. You're about to find out." The Genesis field expanded outward from Earth, like a wave of altered reality. Imperial ships caught within it found their weapons useless, their shields failing, their engines dead. The technology that had conquered the galaxy was suddenly obsolete. But the field was selective. Human ships, designed to operate within the altered physics, moved through it like swimmers in their natural element. They struck the helpless Imperial vessels with precision, ending the lives of ships and crews that had seemed invincible moments before dot in less than an hour. The greatest fleet in galactic history was reduced to drifting hulks. The New Order Emperor. Drax floated in the emergency pod that had ejected from his dying flagship, watching the Annihilator, the Empire's ultimate weapon, drift powerless in space. Around him, the debris of 5,000 warships created a graveyard that stretched across the solar system. General Kane's image appeared on the pod's communication screen, transmitted from Earth's surface. The human leader looked tired but resolute. "Emperor, your war is over, but our conversation is just beginning." Within hours, the impossible news had reached every corner of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire, undefeated for 3,000 years, had been completely destroyed by a single world. Species that had lived under Imperial boot for generations could barely comprehend what they were hearing. On the rim worlds, rebellions began spontaneously. Planets that had submitted to Imperial rule centuries ago suddenly remembered what freedom looked like. The Empire's network of control, built on the foundation of assumed invincibility, crumbled overnight. Back on Earth, the Global Council convened an emergency session. General Kane stood before representatives from every nation, every culture, every faction that made up humanity's diverse family. "The immediate threat is over," Kane reported. "But we've fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Every species out there is going to want to know what comes next." Dr. Webb stepped forward, her face bearing the weight of what they had unleashed. "The Genesis field is stable but contained to our solar system. We can expand it if necessary, but the energy requirements are enormous. We can't hold the entire galaxy under altered physics." "Nor should we," Kane replied firmly. "We didn't fight this war to become conquerors ourselves." The debate that followed would reshape galactic civilization. Some voices called for humanity to claim the Empire's throne to become the new masters of 10,000 worlds. Others argued for complete isolation, using Earth's advanced technology to seal themselves away from galactic politics forever. But Kane had a different vision. "We make ourselves the protectors, not the rulers," he proposed. "Any species that wants freedom gets it. Any species that tries to build a new empire gets stopped. We become the galaxy's immune system against tyranny." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Empire's former subjects were making their own choices. Some worlds declared immediate independence. Others banded together for mutual protection. A few tried to claim pieces of the fallen empire for themselves on the former imperial capital world. The surviving high command gathered in what remained of their government, without the emperor and with their military completely destroyed. They faced a choice between surrender and civil war. Admiral Vex, somehow still alive despite his earlier failures, stood before the remnants of imperial leadership. We have confirmation from our surviving scouts. Earth's defensive field has been withdrawn to their solar system's edge. But their ships are patrolling the major hyperspace routes. What are they doing? Asked the acting Imperial Chancellor. They're enforcing peace, Vex replied grimly. Any ship that moves to attack another world gets intercepted. Any fleet that tries to restore Imperial control gets ... eliminated. The reports were consistent across the galaxy. Humanity had not claimed territory or demanded tribute. Instead, they had positioned themselves as guardians of galactic peace. Species that wanted to trade, explore, or simply exist in peace were left alone. Those who sought to dominate others found their ambitions curtailed by ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Emperor Drax, now a prisoner aboard a human vessel, was brought before General Kane for a final conversation. You've destroyed everything, Drax said bitterly. 3,000 years of order, of progress, of civilization. Kane looked at the fallen emperor with something that might have been pity. Your Majesty, what you called civilization was built on the suffering of billions. What you called order was maintained through fear and oppression. And what replaces it? Drax demanded. Chaos, anarchy, freedom, Kane replied simply. The right of every species to determine their own destiny. The chance for civilizations to grow without someone's boot on their neck. Through the viewport, they could see Earth hanging in space, a small blue world that had changed the fate of the galaxy. Around it, construction ships worked to build new defensive platforms, not to threaten other worlds, but to protect the principle that no species should ever be forced to kneel, Dr. Webb approached with a tablet showing galactic communications. Traffic. General, we're receiving messages from over 300 worlds. They're asking for our help in establishing their own defense forces. Tane nodded. Send teams to assist them. But make it clear, we're not building an empire. We're building a community. As Earth rotated slowly in space, humanity looked outward at a galaxy transformed. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall, that freedom was always possible, and that sometimes the best response to a demand for submission was total annihilation of tyranny itself. The age of the galactic empire was over. The age of galactic freedom had begun. Asterisk.